Hey everyone. So I just wanted to go over some of the things that we did today in class, as well as things that are coming up, and talk about the story of Rogue Wave. So if you were in class today, you know that we did the reading baseline test, and you were also to answer some questions about Rogue Wave, but mostly you needed to read up to line 107 in Rogue Wave in order to answer those questions. So that's what I'm going to talk about is those portions of the text and hopefully give a little bit of help to anybody who was having some problems previously, or if like a question kind of confused you or got you a little bit stuck. So I'm going to be confirming with my notes here. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. And let's just get to it. So hopefully this will help you if your classwork became homework with getting some of those questions answered. So right away at the very beginning of the story, we talked about on Monday how this beginning section that is written entirely in italics sets itself apart from the rest of the story. So this is exposition on the author's part, right? He's trying to explain to us that what a rogue wave is, because I would hazard a guess that most people before reading this story wouldn't know what a rogue wave was. I didn't before I read it. So he also goes to great lengths to describe where we are as far as the setting. So this gives us a really good image in our mind of like what's going on in the story and what the potential conflict is going to be. So again, that's that textual feature of setting everything apart. You can even see that he set that paragraph apart right here by spacing it, and then it's all written in italics to draw your attention in on it. So that deals with question number one in the classwork homework. So question number two is asking you a little bit about lines 11 through 16. So I mentioned when we read yesterday in class, when we were going through the different parts of the story, I read this piece to all of you. And I was saying that there's a little bit of foreshadowing. So I've kind of given away part of the ending of this story in the sense that I told you right away that they were going to have a problem with a wave and it was going to cause the ship to sink. So right here, where starting at line 11, where Scoot is starting to go down into the galley, which again, if you didn't know, a galley is the kitchen on a ship. And she goes down there and she's closing all these doors behind her. And notice that the author says, always a good idea in offshore sailing. And then we find out why that's such a good idea, because she probably would die if not for having done this, which that's a good habit. So if we even, this wasn't part of the question, but if we wanted to talk about Scoot as a character, her actions show that she's a smart sailor, right? Because she did something that you're always supposed to do. And going a little bit further on down, I mentioned the three horizontal hatch boards that were on top of the doors were also firmly in place, securing the 30-foot baba type against sudden invasion of seawater. So right away, the author's giving us a kernel of a little bit of foreshadowing there, talking about how this setting, she's going to be inside a room that is watertight. So when the wave comes, we already know she's inside a room that will keep her safe, and the sense that water won't get in there and she won't drown right away. But this is still also a problem if the boat is starting to sink, because then she's trapped inside a room that's hard to get out of. So it goes both ways, right? It keeps her safe from the seawater, but it also keeps her trapped inside the boat. Moving a little bit further down to lines 17 through 36. So we've got another passage here that's written in all italics, giving us more background information about what a rogue wave is, and it's telling us more about some of the history of rogue waves, like this section here in 1995, yada yada yada, and then we get up to line 36, and we know that the setting is at Cabo Colnet, south of Ensenada, which, you know, that's off the California coast. In my mind, this is setting up a beautiful, calm day out on the water. It's supposed to be really nice out. That's a nice area, beautiful day to be sailing, right? And think about how this setting contrasts with the problem of facing a life or death situation, right? So everything's all great and peaceful, and then we know this is going to happen. This is like a very, you know, drastic juxtapositioning. Juxtapositioning means to show two things that are side by side, but they're completely different from one another. So we have the peacefulness of being out at sea versus the violence of this rogue wave that could be coming potentially. Um, Going on down to number 4, I asked you about lines 63 to 67. So, and we're going to go back. Some of these sections that I've skipped also has some really good information here. So, for instance, it says that Sully was a good teacher. We can make some inferences characterization wise about that. And we'll go back to that in class. But right now, I just wanted to go over the homework. And we're talking about lines 63 through 67, which this is line 60, so 61, 62, 63. And we're going to Sully had sailed her at least a dozen times. He'd been around boats, motor, and sail for many of his 19 years. He thought the old Sea Dog was the best in her category that he'd ever piloted. So again, characterization. This shows us how experienced that Sully is. That's his action out of the steel chart, right? His action is he sailed this ship dozens of times. He's been around boats. He's been doing lots of sailing. And it also goes to show you for the setting, he's on a really nice boat. He's not on just some chintzy boat that he bought off of Craigslist or something, right? This is a really, really nice boat, and it's a pretty expensive one at that. So it's supposed to be a very safe situation that he's in currently, and he's teaching his sister how to sail. So we can also draw from that action that he's such a good sailor that he's able to teach people, that he's a patient person because he's teaching his little sister, that kind of thing. He's a good big brother. And then let's go on down to line 94, which was the next passage that I had asked you to look at. So we're at line 90, 91, 92, 93, 94. So he looked at the mound of upside down hull, bottom to the sky. So at this point, the boat has been flipped over from the wave, unable to believe that the fine, sturdy Sea Dog had been flipped like a cork, perhaps trapping Scoot inside. Treading water, trying to collect his thoughts, he yelled, "Scoot!" But there was no answer. Heart pounding, unable to see over the mound of the hull, he circled it, thinking she might have been thrown clear, but there was no sign of her. So this goes back to number 2, where I talked about already that we were given a little bit of an inkling of knowledge that Sully doesn't know. She was down there and she had very correctly closed the doors behind her, which ultimately ended up saving her life probably, right? Because now she's trapped inside there, but she's also inside an airtight room where the water can't get into it. And then also through this little passage, we'll notice that the author says that the Sea Dog had been flipped like a cork. So for those of you that don't know, when you use like or as to compare two things, that is a simile, which is another one of our literary terms, and flipped like a cork. So let's think about this. I just told you that this boat is really expensive. Sully was talking about how it's the best ship he's ever been in charge of or sailed, and then it's been flipped like a cork. A cork is just a cheap thing that you throw around. I know that sometimes when I have an extra cork, I just throw it on the ground and my cats play with it. So it's not a very strong or sturdy thing, right? And then that comparison is for us. The author is doing that in order to make us think, wow, this wave must have been huge in order to wreck like such a great ship. He's not out there in just a tiny little fishing boat. He's in this great, great boat, and it's still like just completely decimated the boat out of nowhere. And it also kind of goes to, it's not really his fault because he could have never predicted that there was going to be a rogue wave, which is kind of the problem with rogue waves is they're hard to predict, right? Which it comes back to some of that background information earlier in the story where it was written in italics. So that's basically where we left off, because we left off at line 107, which is where I told you to look for, or where to stop with your reading for today. And then next class, we're going to just keep on progressing through the story, as well as I want to do some activities with talking about the different kinds of character that Scoot and Sully both show that they are using our steel charts. And we talked about that a little bit in this video. So with that, next time I see you, we will be talking about some more rogue waves. So I hope this was useful for you.